Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. Today we're quilting our first quilting design in our rail fence block number 3. So we've gotten a lot of practice so far with straight lines and sharp angles. We're going to get some more practice today doing some nice straight lines and some kind of triangle shapes, some zigzags in our rail fence block. So let's get started. So here's my block marked up, ready to go, and if you're looking for the quilting design, the quilting guides to mark this, check out the Building Blocks quilt pattern where you'll find the full-size guide ready to mark your blocks and get them ready to go. Find the pattern at leahday.com. So let's get started. We've got some straight lines here that are just going to basically run parallel to our stitch in the ditch line, and I have already ditched this block. It's already secure and ready to go. So I'm just going to travel stitch over and start stitching those straight lines. And it's very, very simple. Keep this hand with your index finger kind of parallel to your foot and needle, and that's going to help you guide the block through the machine, keeping that line straight. Of course, if you get off that marked line, don't worry about it too much. You can erase the marked line. It's not the end of the world. So the straight lines through this block are going to be very simple. Just simply stitch on the line, running basically from top to bottom. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that most machines are not going to like to stitch this sideways, and most are definitely not going to like stitching it backwards. I can make an attempt here, but really I can't even see the line very clearly. So it's really not the best direction to be kind of pulling the block through like this. I can't really see behind it the foot. That's kind of a clunky foot. I can't really see behind it, so it's really the best idea to rotate and get the best perspective on your block as you stitch it through. So I'm going to finish up these straight lines down the block, and then we're going to get started on these nice triangle zigzags. Okay, we're ready to get started in this area of the block. And we've got basically a large zigzag line running down the length. I'm going to kind of indicate this, how it kind of zigs down from corner to corner. So you'll end up in this corner if you stitch that line continuously. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to basically start here, head these points, and end up right here. And it is a good idea. If you want to, you can rotate the block with every one. I'm going to try and stitch these with the block facing one direction. Let's just see how that goes. We are going to do a lot of rotation in this block in order to be able to stitch all of this fairly accurately. It's one of those things, you've got to do what's most comfortable for you. These are pretty soft angles, just running these diagonals, so I'm finding that the machine's working it pretty well, but watch those directions. Sometimes your machine might not like the angle that you're working in, so don't hesitate to rotate. If you start skipping stitches or you hear something funny with your machine. Okay, so rotating around, we've got these little sections here to fill, and I call this internal echoing, which means that we've got a stitched line here, and we're going inside of it with an echo that's kind of like a ripple, a set distance apart from that first line. So we've got these little echoes running in, and they're all evenly spaced, and we're just going to travel stitch along the stitched in the ditch line, along the stitch line, in order to get to those. So I'm going to stitch down, come out with my triangle, down and hit back up against that ditch line. Do a little bit of stitching back in order to get to that next line and follow it up as well. Sometimes you can get away without rotating your block, but honestly some of that is a little tricky because you can't really see as clearly. Sometimes it's not the machine, it's just having a really good visual on what you're doing, so please don't hesitate to rotate. Alright, I'm going to travel stitch down. There is going to be some travel stitching in this block, you cannot avoid it. Just go on ahead and do it carefully and slowly. And here I'm going to show you what happens if you want to rotate, what that's going to look like. Stitch down, rotate, and stitch this direction. We'll rotate over in order to stitch this little tiny, oop, and see I stitched right out of the ditch. It's okay, I've got a fix for that. I'll make sure to remember to show you how I'm going to hide that little mistake at the end. There is a way, especially whenever you're working with an easy fabric like this black, you can hide a lot of mistakes even if you stitch out of the ditch. It's no big deal. Okay, finish up that last little triangle there. A lot of people have been wondering, okay, if I stitch out of the ditch, do I just continue to follow where I stitched out? You can see how I kind of popped out there. Well, it's totally up to you. I have already ditched this, so you can see the 2 lines. It's not really all that far off. It's not anything to obsess about. I'm not too worried about this, but just in case you're seeing stuff that you're really worried about, in this case, I'm just going to take a black Sharpie. This is just a black Sharpie permanent marker, and I'm going to color that white thread, and that's going to hide it. So no one's going to be the wiser, no one's going to be able to see it. And I'm going to stitch on the actual ditch. I'm not going to stitch and follow my mistake because I've hidden my mistake. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So there we go. So there are 3 layers of thread right there. It's going to look fine. If I flip up the back of the block, maybe you can see it. No, we're too close to it right now. You can't really see it, but I'll make sure to share a photo of it so you can see it's really not that big of a deal. It's not super noticeable. It's going to get hidden in the folds of the quilt whenever it's completely finished. So I wouldn't obsess about it is what I'm saying. Sometimes rotating a lot will help. Sometimes rotating a lot will make you stitch off. It's really funny how it works that way. What I'm doing now is I'm simply filling in all of these little lines that are kind of right here in this corner. Back up the camera a little bit so you can see. And then I'm going to fill in this triangle shape just the exact same way as we filled up these 2. Simply stitching on those marked lines, trying to keep them as straight as possible. You can see here, this got a little wiggly wobbly and it's pretty noticeable. You know, there are fixes for this. If you stitch all of these lines kind of slightly wiggly wobbly, it won't be as noticeable that one is stitched wiggly wobbly. So there's that consistency thing. That might be a good idea too. Understand that you can get really obsessive about this and really hard on yourself, and there's absolutely no point to that. This is going to look just fine, and for the most part, mistakes like stitching out of the ditch and stuff, you know, I know a lot of professional quilters that will take a Sharpie marker to their quilt, so understand that this isn't a bad thing to do. So that's it for stitching these straight lines in our rail fence block. Understand that little cheat that I showed you, kind of coloring out a little mistake with a Sharpie marker. I actually learned that from another professional show quilter. So understand that everybody makes mistakes. No matter how good you are at quilting, everyone makes mistakes. The only difference between someone that has been quilting for a long time and maybe is a professional show quilter, that kind of thing, is they've learned how to hide those mistakes really well. And that's really the only difference. You know, it's one of those things, I don't want you to get obsessive about it. Certainly don't get too obsessive about your straight lines. I think that no matter how you quilt this block, it's going to be beautiful. And I think it's particularly interesting to see how all of these straight lines and sharp angles really add drama to this block. It's a very simple block. It's only a rail fence, but the quilting has completely transformed it. So I hope that you will enjoy stitching this out yourself. Of course, if you have any questions about it, don't hesitate to post to the Free Motion Quilting Project blog or our Building Blocks group on Facebook. You can definitely join in the fun there, post any questions, and of course, post pictures of your blocks as you quilt them so everyone can see what you're doing. So my name is Leah Day, and this has been a video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. Pick up your copy of the Building Blocks quilt pattern and get all of your piecing instructions plus all of your full-size quilting guides so you can mark your blocks and quilt along with us on the Building Blocks Quilt Along. So pick up your pattern at leahday.com, and until next time, let's go quilt.